In today's video, we have a variety of NHL news to discuss, including an update on Leafs prospect goalie Ian Scott. We have some news from the NHL Waiver Wire. We also have some updates on Dustin Byfuglien's situation with the Winnipeg Jets. Could he actually kind of mend fences here and return to Winnipeg later this year? Plus, we have a trade rumor involving Russian goalie prospect Ilya Sorokin. Will he stay in the KHL? Will he come to the NHL? And if so, will it be with the Islanders? We'll get into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news updates, and let's dive in first of all with an update on Maple Leafs goaltender Ian Scott, who was last year's CHL top goaltender of the season. Of course, this year's been a disappointing year. He's yet to play any games for the Toronto Marlies, which is where he likely was going to end up playing for the season, but he's been having issues with his hip. He has now undergone hip surgery for an impingement and is expected to be about a 6-month recovery, which means he's not going to end up playing at all this season. So, of course, Ian Scott came into the year with a very promising future. Of course, the Maple Leafs right now are, pretty decent at the NHL level. They're starting goaltender, at least with Freddie Anderson. They have a couple of really good prospect goalies in terms of Scott and Joseph Woll. So they're waiting on those guys to see what they will develop into. And Scott had a phenomenal year in junior last year. So to have a setback like this, I'm sure for him is extremely disappointing. Will likely hold back his development here. Hard to say, how much of an impact it'll have on his potential future or career. Obviously, the hips are a very important part for goaltenders and being flexible and all the movements they have to do. So I guess we will see how he recovers, but certainly not the news that he was looking for in the Leafs organization. But he will make a full recovery, get back into action, be ready for training camp in 2020-2021 NHL season. Now, as I mentioned, we also have some waiver claims today. Yesterday, we talked about a few players being placed on waivers. The only one who cleared was Flames forward Austin Czarnik. He has been cleared and assigned to the AHL team for the Flames, where he is expected to get some game action in. But the other two players ended up going to different teams. The San Jose Sharks put in a claim and took forward Stefan Nason. Of course, he was with the Penguins, had a really solid year in the American Hockey League before being signed to an NHL deal, had a handful of games, had mixed results there, and they wanted to reassign him back to the minors, but instead he's off to the Sharks. Now, the Sharks are a team, as we've discussed, that's not really having great results right now. They're currently sitting out of the playoffs, underachieving. He's not going to be like a huge help, but obviously he is a good depth player who has a decent amount of NHL experience now. A lot came with New Jersey for a few years after bouncing around for a little while. He was originally drafted by Ottawa quite some time ago, but Nason will certainly be able to provide some depth there. Maybe play bottom 6 minutes and can be assigned later on to their American Hockey League affiliate, depending on how everything works out. But it's unfortunate for the Penguins that they signed him and thus ended up losing him. Now, the other waiver claim was goaltender Eric Comrie going back to the Winnipeg Jets, where he started his career. Now, he was with Detroit. Prior to that, he was with Arizona, so he's bounced around a few times this year. But ultimately, the Winnipeg Jets had a need there, and it's obviously somebody they're very familiar with. So they've put in a claim to bring him back into Winnipeg. So I guess we'll see if he gets any opportunity at the NHL level or exactly how that's all going to play out here. So we will see how much opportunity Eric Comrie gets in Winnipeg on a second time around. Now, as I mentioned, staying with the Jets, we do want to discuss the Dustin Byfuglien situation with the Winnipeg Jets. Now, of course, clearly he's been out all year. We know how this story went. Just to kind of recap quickly, he showed up about a week early to the Winnipeg area, was doing some informal skates with some teammates. Everything appeared to be okay from what everybody kind of heard and seen. But then on the first day of camp, he didn't show up. We were later found out that he was contemplating his future, wasn't sure if he was going to play or not. And then we were later revealed that he was actually still having a lot of issues with the ankle injury that he battled through multiple times last year. Now, the only thing is at the end of every NHL season, they do have exit interviews, and he would have signed off on a report indicating at that point that he was healthy. So kind of contradicts things on how everything went there. So there seemed to be a bit of a rift between himself and the team and the medical staff and how everything was handled. But it is what it is. He had his own voluntary type of surgery, sought his own medical team, had surgery on the ankle, and was announced he was going to be out probably till around February or March, somewhere around that timeline, before he'd be able to play. The surgery was done back in October. But the good news now is that there seems to be more communication between Byfuglien's camp and a Jets team, that he's keeping him up to date on how his rehab is going, which is some positive signs. Of course, he did file a grievance with through the NHLPA to try to see if they could get him off of his suspension, because right now he's suspended by the team, given the fact that he did not report to training camp, which prevents them from having to pay him. So there's clearly a variety of things that could be going on here. One, I'm sure he feels like he wants to get paid, so clearly that's why the big part of the reason why he'd want to file the grievance. Secondly, could he want to return to the Winnipeg Jets, or would he want to be traded? Either way, it sounds like he's going to be wanting to play somewheres, but given the situation in Winnipeg and all the adversity they face with injuries and uncertainty over him and others that they've had to deal with this season, I think the Jets have done relatively well. If they could get him back, around mid to late February or early March, it would be even better than a trade deadline acquisition, because they would not have to spend any assets or anything to make the acquisition. He would be a huge boost to that lineup if they could mend the fences here and get him back into the lineup for at least the rest of this year. It'd be a huge lift to that team for sure heading into the NHL playoffs. I know many people even wondered if they'd be a playoff team given everything that was going on heading into the season. Of course, they had a lot of other situations, not just Byfuglien. Most of others, of course, have been since resolved with contract situations for guys like Patrick Laine and Kyle Connor, start of the year of training camp at least without having contracts in place. Similarly, though, there's been no update on the Byfuglien grievance filing. Nobody really knows when there's supposed to be an arbitration hearing. There's really even doubt right now if that's even going to take place. Could they end up dropping the situation? Possibly. There seems to be some reports out there that indicate that the arbitration hearing might not actually take place on the grievance. So I guess we will wait to be seen here. Perhaps Byfuglien realizes that maybe he doesn't really have a case and is trying to mend fences and try to make a return, or will the Jets end up trying to move him and get some assets in return? Either way, it's like a free gift to the Jets to either get him back on the ice preferably, or if they did trade him, to hopefully get a decent return to help the team heading into the playoffs. So let me know what you think on the Byfuglien situation. Could we actually see him skating on the Jets blue line by March after the trade deadline? And do you see that being a huge boost to the team heading into the playoffs? Now, as I mentioned as well, I also want to take a look at New York Islanders prospect goaltender Elia Sorokin, who's currently playing over in the KHL. There's been a lot of talk that he was set to make his way to North America and join the Islanders more than likely next season. Now, there was a lot of talk this past offseason that their goaltending shuffle they went through was largely in part to continue to make sure that they were, convincing him to come over. Obviously, they let Robin Lehner go as a free agent, which many kind of questioned. And of course, they still had Thomas Greiss under contract for another year. And then they signed Semyon Varlamov to a longer-term contract as well. But as well as Thomas Greiss has been playing, would they want to let him go as a free agent next offseason? It seems doubtful to let two really solid goaltenders go like that in back-to-back seasons. But many wondered if that might be the direction that they might be heading. Of course, Varlamov's a Russian goaltender, could mentor Sorokin, and of course they share an agent as well. I know myself, I kind of question whether or not Lou Lamoriello's tactics here were to kind of bring somebody on board like that to help convince Sorokin to come. But now there's been more talk about a potential KHL extension, and there's some talk that maybe Sorokin's only even discussing it as a tactic to get the Islanders to trade him or to trade his rights to another NHL team so that he will have a faster way to gain a starting goaltending position in the NHL. He's not going to be a super young goaltender like many coming over. He's already going to be in his mid-20s. If he were to sign an extension for a few more years over there, he'd be in his late 20s when he came over. So he does have a little bit of leverage on the Islanders here if he makes it known that he wants to be, and have an NHL opportunity. And if he's not guaranteed to get that with the Islanders, he may not be so inclined to make his way over. There's clearly plenty of teams out there that likely would show interest. I mean, he's a really solid goaltender with a proven record in the KHL for quite a number of time now. I'm sure there would be plenty of interest should a trade actually take place. But all the dimensions that we mentioned before about Sorokin's potential contract extension over in the KHL very well could be a plot to get himself onto another NHL franchise to make sure that he gets into the crease even faster should he make the jump next year. So if you're the New York Islanders, do you take the chances and trade him and make sure you get something in return? Or do you risk him not coming over and losing out on a really solid prospect who could end up staying over in the KHL for a few more years and potentially never make the jump over to the NHL? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. We'll continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.